So my friend sent me this article about birthing traditions. So let's have a look. So here we have a picture of what looks like a tukang urut or a postpartum traditional Malay massage specialist who is putting on a modern bengkong on a postpartum woman. So if you see my other videos about petua and pantang in pregnancy, you can see the difference between, maybe I'll try to link the video. You can see the difference between the traditional bengkong and this modern bengkong. All right, let's have a look. So birthing traditions involve practices performed during prenatal labor and postnatal periods. In various communities, it is believed that prenatal practices can have an impact on the process of labor and delivery. The postnatal period is for a woman to recover from childbirth, hence, specific rituals are observed to ensure recovery and prevent ill health in later years. The restoration of maternal health is important, and practices are undertaken in the belief that they protect the woman from future illnesses. In multicultural Singapore, women continue to observe a set of practices before and after childbirth. The Chinese, Indians, and Malays have their own customs and practices. While each community has its own distinct practices relating to birthing traditions, there are some common practices that these communities share. These practices mostly revolve around helping the mother stay healthy before birth and remain in good health after childbirth. Okay, that's pretty general. Geographic location. The practices observed by the Chinese, Malay, and Indian communities in Singapore originate from the places where migrants to Singapore were from. Okay, what does this mean? This sounds like Chinese migrants are from China, Malay migrants are from Malaysia, Indonesia, Indian migrants are from India. Let's read on. In places over the world where there are these diaspora communities, some of these birthing traditions are still observed by the respective communities. In Singapore, practices related to birthing traditions usually take place within homes. Okay, that's right, I guess. Communities involved. Okay, so the article is going to talk about the three communities, right? They have already stated that there are three homogeneous sounding communities, and it's going to go through each community one by one, each racial community. So I'll just skip to the part about the Malays because I don't know much about the Chinese and Indian practices. So I'll just look at the Malay part. Let's see. For postnatal services associated with Malays, such as postnatal massages and use of the bengkong, which is that wrap that we saw in the photo just now, they are in high demand, not just by Malay women, but also by non-Malay women in Singapore. Yes, that's right. But it seems a little bit random because then the Indian community paragraph is talking about prayers, and okay, they do mention some variations. So far, they have not mentioned any variation among the Malays, in addition to talking about Malays as migrants, and there's so far, no notion of Malays as being indigenous to Singapore. Associated social and cultural practices. Okay, here's the Chinese one. I'm going to skip to the Malay one. Pregnant Malay women are encouraged to read verses of the Quran during their pregnancy. Surah Maryam is read for an easy birth, and Surah Yusuf is read for beauty and wisdom of the baby. Besides this, Malay women may also adhere to practices that are believed to impact the process of delivery. Okay, so here they're referring to the two surahs, which is from the Quran, are referring to what I mentioned in the previous video about petua. So these are like tips or old wives' tales that you're encouraged, it's something that you're encouraged to do in order to gain some benefit. And then it goes on to say Malay women may also adhere to practices that are believed to impact the process of delivery. For example, they avoid sleeping during the day and sitting at the doorstep of their home for fear of having a difficult labor. So these refer to the pantang or taboos, which there are a lot of these taboos, as I mentioned in a previous video. Some Malays may also carry out a traditional ceremony called linggang perut, or rocking the abdomen. I go into this in further detail in another video. I'll try and link it below. So in this ritual, the idea is to encourage the fetus to get into a right position. It can also be compared to the practice of rebozo, which is from Mexico, if I'm not wrong, or maybe South America in general, where they use a scarf to sift the abdomen or the pelvis to encourage the baby to get into a better position for delivery. But it seems like the Malay ritual of linggang perut is more symbolic rather than with a very specific physical outcome. So here they describe it as, during the ceremony, the pregnant woman lies on 7 pieces of sarong of different colors, while the midwife massages the pregnant woman's stomach. The 7 pieces of sarong are pulled out one by one gently from under the pregnant woman in opposite directions, thus creating a rocking movement. So as I mentioned, this rocking movement is more symbolic because if you only have 7 pieces of cloth, the woman's belly is only going to go like left and right 7 times. We will not actually do anything physically. Okay, next one, postnatal traditions. The Chinese, Malay, and Indian communities in Singapore usually observe a confinement period after giving birth, where the mother is not allowed to leave home. This is to protect both the mother and child from contracting infectious diseases and keep them healthy during the critical months. So this is interesting how there's the tradition or the ritual is given a medicalized reason for this modern day. Um, I think maybe, at least from my knowledge, in the Malay community, the way they talk about confinement is like, okay, if you don't, like, if you go out during these 40 days, then like something bad will happen to you. You know, like when you're older, you'll have aches and pains, or the mother may have will have like postpartum psychosis. So things like that they cannot really explain medically. Okay, here it says the Malays traditionally have 40 to 44 days of confinement. However, many of new mothers in Singapore now prefer a 30-day confinement as some women have to return to work or run errands. This is new to me. I have not heard about this before, at least among the Malay community. I don't know, maybe it's they talk about it in the other communities. Okay, childbirth is believed to deplete the mother of heat, blood, and air, making her vulnerable to cold, wind, and diseases. So I guess this article agrees that all three communities follow a humoral system, a humoral idea of health. So that means like there's a concept of like heat and cold, or like bile, phlegm, so things concepts which are not biomedical. Malay and Indian mothers are encouraged to take a warm herbal shower. In the case, in the Malay case, it's called a mandi bunga. So I wouldn't really call it herbs because, well, literally, mandi bunga means a flower bath. So it's the idea is that you have flowers in there and leaves and things that smell nice. So one of my respondents described it as there was pandan, which is a fragrant leaf, jasmine, which is also very strong smelling, rose petals, maybe orchids, bunga. Is it bunga kenanga, which is ylang-ylang? Food is also another way to keep mothers warm. All three communities enforce a strict diet during confinement. So avoiding cold and windy foods. And here, okay, the Malays are encouraged to consume a special drink called jamu, which is an herbal medicine. So to be more specific, this jamu is known as obat periuk, literally pot medicine, like medicine you cook in a pot. It's made up of a whole list of different herbs, which most tukang urut or massage specialists will just buy from Geylang. So they don't specifically put the concoction together themselves. So it's just like a ready-made packet, which comes from Malaysia. Besides this, Malay mothers also undergo postnatal massages for 3 consecutive days after they have given birth. This is not correct. The number of postnatal massages can be up to like 20 or even 30, I think. For those who can afford it, they can have a massage every day or every other day, all the way to the end of confinement. The tukang urut that I knew and that I have spoken to offer packages of 10 to 15 massages, and they usually try to start as soon as possible. So the very day that the new mother comes back from the hospital, she can already start having massages. And then, depending on her schedule, this will be every day or every other day, all the way to the end of confinement. So I think, yeah, 3 consecutive days, that's a bit strange. I have not really heard about that. Of course, if a mother has had a cesarean birth, depending on the comfort level of the tukang urut, they might either massage only the back and not touch the woman's belly, and then only after, or there are some that will not even massage the woman at all and only wait 1 or 2 weeks after birth. The massages are said to lower blood pressure and improve blood circulation, which increases oxygen supply and aids in eliminating toxins from the mother's body. So again, this is like a medicalized reason sort of attributed to this practice, which I mean, I don't disagree with it, but it's not like the tukang urut is going to give you this kind of explanation as they give you the massage, you know? I think from the perspective of the masseuse, the traditional masseuse, it's more about, yes, relieving the aches and pains. Also, it's about like, okay, so during pregnancy, the woman's bones and joints are loose. They are spoken of as being loose, and then and also like under strain. And then during birth, the woman's body goes through a lot of strain and hard work. So after birth, all these bones and joints kind of need to be put back into the right place. That's kind of how I think, like in the Malay cosmology, that they talk about it. And as some of my respondents said in a previous video that I did, they say that they prefer like a firm kind of massage. Yes, so for the improved blood circulation. Sengkak. Okay, going on further, sengkak uterus massage may also be carried out to restore uterus to its original position, as pregnancy and labor causes it to sag or slip from its normal position. I think this sounds kind of strange because they just had this sort of medicalized explanation, and then now it's saying that the uterus sags or slips. I think that's quite a strange way to talk about it. I think if like if they were giving this medicalized explanation, they should continue and say that the uterus is involuting to its normal size. So during pregnancy, the uterus expands, right? To what is it? 20, is it 20 or 40 times its original size? During pregnancy, if you go to the doctor or a midwife, well, I think midwife, because nowadays doctors don't really usually measure fundal length, which is the measurement from your pubic bone to the top of the uterus, which is known as the fundus. So it grows, your uterus will grow about a centimeter for each week of pregnancy. So at the end of pregnancy, it will be about 40 centimeters. Let's just say that. So right after you give birth, the uterus will be about 20 centimeters, the fundal length. So it's about half. So that uterus is now empty, and like the baby and placenta is out, but it takes about 2 weeks to go back to its original size, which is that, the size of your fist or a bit smaller. And then it has to go back into the pelvis, so behind the pubic bone. So it doesn't sag anywhere. It doesn't slip anywhere. It has exited the pelvis, and it is now above the pubic bone the whole time of pregnancy. And then after pregnancy, it has to become smaller and then go back to its normal position. Bengkong or traditional wrap is also an important part of the confinement period. Malay mothers will wrap their abdomen and back. Yeah, I guess the back is included because the wrap goes around, right? The bengkong is believed to help flatten their tummy, reduce weight, and tone the body, protect the internal organs, and reduce the swelling of organs. Tighten the abdomen, promote good posture, break down fat and cellulite, and prevent overeating. Okay. I think, yeah, some of this I have not heard before. I think break down fat. The bengkong, from what I've heard, is that yes, it's for supporting the organs, for supporting the pelvis. That's very important. And sort of this idea that because the pelvis is open, right, it has widened during pregnancy and labor during birth. So the bengkong helps to kind of squeeze it back together and help the mother feel more comfortable, because there's this feeling of like looseness and instability. So it helps keep everything stable and tight. And especially with like the traditional bengkong which is a long piece of cloth, like about 6 meters long. Is it 6 meters? Yeah, 6 meters long, and then it has a series of knots. So that one is more supportive than the modern one. Before wrapping the bengkong, the leaves of galangal or pandan are included, and oil, herbs, and spices are rubbed onto the mother's abdomen and back. I have not heard, I think, nowadays of people putting the leaves, galangal or pandan leaves, in the bengkong. More like the tukang urut will have used oil, and then in the oil there's some infusion of like turmeric, lemongrass, and so on. And then after applying the oil, the tukang urut will help to wrap the belly and the pelvis. Okay, moving on. What is this? This is during confinement, right? Okay, in the Malay community, the azan, or the call to prayer, is recited in the baby's right ear, and the kamat, or second call to prayer, is recited in the left ear. This is done by the baby's father immediately after birth. The placenta is collected and buried after it has been cleaned. Yes, yes. To celebrate the newborn's arrival, a kenduri or ceremonial feast is held alongside the customary ritual of cukur rambut. So this is when this is done. Traditionally done on the 7th day after the baby's birth. I think nowadays this cukur rambut is done more like 1 month after the baby's birth. Like 7 days is a bit too soon. Okay, besides the cukur rambut ceremony, tahnik and akikah may also be carried out together. Tahnik is the application of honey, or I think people use dates, not honey. Anyway, into the child's mouth at the ceremony, at the cukur rambut ceremony. The akikah is the sacrifice of an animal on the occasion of a child's birth. Yeah, normally people would just pay for the service, and then the lamb or the sheep or the goat is slaughtered in a different country, like Indonesia or Cambodia. Okay, these services are now usually provided by Muslim professionals, including religious teachers, instead of being organized by the family or community. Well, I'm not sure. I think it's still both. One reason is the relative loss of knowledge by younger parents, or when their own family members are not able to assist in the preparations. Experience of practitioners. Okay, Madam Liza binti Abbas is a bidan or midwife, and her late mother and her grandmother were also bidan. She identifies strongly with the tradition and believes that these are important as knowledge that has been passed down and applied for thousands of years. Okay, Madam Liza's age is not stated, so we don't know whether was she a traditional midwife, like she learned. Okay, well, yeah, here it says like her mother and grandmother were also midwives, so perhaps she apprenticed under them. Or did she maybe go to the midwifery school? Singapore had a midwifery school from the mid 50s to the 70s. it was open for about 25 years. And there were some Malays who also trained as midwives, but these, I would call these obstetric midwives or government midwives, because they learn biomedical, they get biomedical training about midwifery, not the traditional indigenous knowledge of midwifery. And they were also, in Malay, they were also called bidan, like bidan. There's a bidan kampung, village midwife, so that's referring to the traditional one. And then there was bidan, was it bidan kerajaan? That would be the government midwife. Or sometimes like the older Malay people would just, who remember them, would just call them the Missy, Missy, and they can describe, like, okay, she had a white uniform and she carried a suitcase. Okay, moving on. However, the right knowledge is important in ensuring safe practice. She hopes that Malay postnatal treatments can benefit people beyond the Malay community as a way to also ensure continued transmission of the practice. Present status. The transmission of birthing traditions relies heavily on the families and the knowledge that they pass down from generation to generation. While some traditional practices are not always adhered to, it has been observed that new mothers in all three communities tend to follow the recommendations on food during pregnancy and confinement. Okay, I feel like this paragraph is just giving me very how to say, like very anthropology vibes, like it's like, okay, because this article is meant to be intangible cultural heritage. Okay, so this is an entry in this sort of database about intangible cultural heritage. So yes, it is very brief. And then they do talk about things from a very long durée perspective. So you have, I think, some traditions which are like very old, like maybe pre-colonial, and then there are some things which are, in today's context of medicalized birth. So maybe more like the postnatal traditions are more practiced than the ones of pregnancy. Um, yeah, and also there isn't really enough nuance because we've got three communities, and I think like there's so much variation between each community. They should have each gotten like one article. So to kind of squeeze everything into one is a bit strange to me. I think it could have. So for example, like, okay, Malays. As you'll see in my other videos, right? There's so much when it comes to the betul and the pantang during pregnancy, and then also after pregnancy, and then some things like some of these traditions, where they come from like Javanese customs or Sundanese customs, and then all these different suku bangsa or ethnic groups, which are all collapsed into the political category of Malay in Singapore. So we've kind of lost that nuance, and I think it also applies for the same when we talk about the, Indian community, that there's a lot of variation in that. And then also, like, what about Indian Muslims? And then if I think to my respondents, I had some Pakistani respondents who were talking about very specific Pakistani rituals, or I think the postpartum diet. She was talking about how they had this mixture of nuts. So this is definitely not being done among the Malays, but then like Pakistani, yeah, sometimes some of them are included in the category of Malay, or some are included in the category of Indian, and of course there was a lot of Peranakan communities, so a lot of intermarriage, and then there's actually, like, I think a lot more mixing that has happened in Singapore, and this just is not, we just don't see it. If we read an article like this, it really sounds like these three communities are so homogeneous, with their own customs and practices. Each community has its own distinct practices, and then there are some common practices. So this actually comes from the colonial categorization of Chinese, Indian, and Malay, and now in Singapore we have the category of other, CMIO. I think, yeah, that's quite unfortunate, because then we lose a lot of richness in the information that we can get about these birthing practices. Yeah, and then, of course, there's also no mention of Malays being the indigenous people of Singapore. It's not that they're not, yes, they were migrants from around the Malay world or the Nusantara, like from Java, Sulawesi, but they were still considered, it's all considered like one land. So in Malay, we say tanah air to refer to homeland, and the two words, tanah and air. Tanah means land and air means water or the sea. So the entire Malay world is considered, like, even you would be considered internal migration, like moving around the islands. Um, you were not considered like a migrant. Like, it was after you move to somewhere else within the Malay world, like, you're still, as long as you speak the lingua franca Malay, you're still considered Malay. Okay, anyway, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.